Here's an interesting idea. What if we don't read? There's this whole epidemic of people saying, "Oh, I want to read, but I don't read as much as I should." Whatever. What if we don't read because reading is expensive? Reading means, at least if you're an honest reader, if you're someone who's sensitive to the stuff you read, if you're someone who engages with the things you read like deeply, then what if it's just not something your system can afford right now? What if just having your whole worldview altered and messed with, the sort of the coding of the way you make sense of the world, the coding, the structural foundation of your mental models is going to be like tampered with. Not necessarily in a bad way, maybe the end result of that is good, more mental plasticity, a richer model. But in a world where we're drowning in information that Instagram's drip feeding us all the fucking time, and in a world where dysregulation is the norm, not the exception, in a world where the real problem seems to be brain rot, which, in other words, is a problem of integration rather than lack of information. What if in a world like that, just reading books are even more powerful disruptors of status quo, of your internal status quo, than Instagram posts. They're very powerful. I mean, that's what makes a book a good book, right? If it's got the ability to fuck with your mental models, if it's got the ability to mess with the way you look at the world, then it's a good book. But what if that's just expensive, given where you're at right now? What if you can't afford that? That it just struck me because I was just thinking of how some of the insights that are crystallizing in me right now, that I see in action in me, that I'm, because I do this thing where I contextualize things that are happening to me in my life with ChatGPT on a real-time basis, which in a way can be seen as an act of writing a book without actually writing a book, because, brain rot. But then it struck me, like, some of these ideas that I'm living out right now, that I'm contextualizing with ChatGPT from my life, I'm already familiar with some of these ideas theoretically from having read a book a few months ago. And I've been trying to read this book for, I think I've given it 2-3 shots. And I could never get beyond the first 10-15% of the book. And now I'm thinking maybe that's because if I'd gone further into that book, my whole system would have been like, God, I just want to live this, the tension between the understanding and the inability to effectuate the things I'm reading would have been too much for me. It would have caused me so much pain. It would have consumed so many resources. I'm not happy with the way I'm articulating this. I think I could do a better job. What do I want to say? 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 I think what I'm saying is, if I'd read more of that book, I'm just saying it makes sense to me why I didn't read any more of that book, because my nervous system's ability to receive that information, the energy, the possibilities encoded in that information. Because why else would you want to consume information if there's no possibility in that information to recode your life, reshape your life? That possibility would have been too much for my state back then, because I wouldn't have had the capacity. And I don't think I have the capacity even now, because I'm too busy implementing the coherence and the wisdom that struck me in the first 20, 30, 40 pages of the book. Maybe a different kind of information would go in more easily. Maybe information that complements what's happening in my life rather than adding layers to it. Maybe just reading about walruses would be more of an option right now. Which brings me back to, maybe it's not about, oh, do I not read enough? It's, do you offer yourself enough possibilities to read a variety of things? Do you understand that your nervous system doesn't have one relationship with reading as a whole thing, but rather it has different kinds of relationships with different kinds of material, and maybe has more readiness to accept some kinds of reading versus some other kinds of reading? This is just me engaging with this topic of, I just saw this in me and I thought maybe this has something to do with, maybe this is like a reason why people don't read as much as they should, because they just don't have the nervous system capacity to digest real transmissions, real life-changing transmissions. Well, then maybe I'm wondering right now if there's a role in life, if this is the role that, if this is the place where fiction comes in, right? If fiction is more, is less of a transmission and more of a story, right? Because we seek escape through movies. Maybe, well, this is actually, I'm not trying to make this a thing for people. I'm not transmitting anything. This is me thinking out loud and capturing my thoughts as a video, which makes it more engaging to engage with later. More interesting to engage with later, rather, than just drab notes. Now I'm just checking myself out. I'm gonna stop.